Hi, I'm Diamond Roundtree.
And I'm Grant Hospodarsky.
Welcome to Media for Change,
a television show produced by the students from the Department of Communication and Media at the University of Northern Iowa. We believe that media can be a powerful force for bringing about positive change and innovation into our world.
Today, we will be diving into the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion, commonly referred to as DEI.
In recent years, DEI has emerged as a cornerstone of organizational policies, social movements, and public discourse.
Iowa lawmakers have recently passed a series of bills addressing issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion in various sectors, including education, employment, and public services.
These bills have faced criticism, as several organizations and individuals have raised concerns about the negative impact on minority communities, businesses, schools, and government agencies. Today, we will explore some perspectives on the issue.
Book banning has been a hot-button issue in the state of Iowa. According to PEN America, 450 books were banned in 2023 from Iowa public schools. Some Iowa students are fighting back. Let's take a look.
On May 26, 2023, Kim Reynolds, Iowa's governor, signed many education bills into law. The parental rights legislation that was passed and signed into law consists of banning most books depicting sex from grades K through 12, banning teaching and materials referencing gender identity and sexual orientation through 6th grade, and requires school administrators to out students to parents or guardians if the student asks to use a name or pronouns other than those assigned at birth. While this legislation was ramping up in the early months of 2023, Gemma Bullock and other frustrated students came up with the idea to do walkouts to show their response to Senate File 496. Little did they know that their story would have such an impact on Iowa families around the state. Let's take a look at Gemma's powerful story.
I met Emma Mitchell, who goes to UNI right now. I helped her start up the Iowa Career Student Alliance, or the QSA. And then we planned and did the whole statewide walkouts against the anti-LGBTQ legislation. And that was a big success. We had rallies, the Capitol, we had just general protests. The whole point of the walkout was we wanted people to know that the students who they're making these bills about and who are affected by this legislation, they did not like that this was going on. We hadn't planned on it being kind of like a Capitol rally, but there were some students that really stepped up and, made that happen. Our numbers went from maybe 8 schools just in the Des Moines area to over 50 and like 3 colleges. Planning walkouts is a really, really good way to not only grab attention, but to make a spot for us at the table. The kinds of bills that they were introducing, it definitely made me feel like I was alone in thinking that, queer people deserve rights in Iowa. The conversation that is being held in the Capitol is heavily driven by just adults. They don't really listen to people our age because we don't know what we're talking about, or, we're not educated enough, and we just aren't mature enough to understand what they're doing exactly, which is not true, but it's what they believe. Books are a very helpful way for some students to learn things, whether it's, about their sexuality, about their gender, or whatever, via books, because it's a lot more comfortable to read a book on your own than to have a conversation with an adult that you might not fully trust or might have issues with. There's just a lot of things in books that, you have to learn about. If they get banned, who's going to learn?
Minority representation in journalism is something that concerns many newsrooms, both to value the contributions of many journalists and to ensure the accuracy in news reporting.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion practices are an ever-changing set of guidelines to ensure that all viewpoints are represented. This is especially important in journalism media. The Pew Research Center conducted a study in 2019 which found that Black Americans tend to be underrepresented in U.S. newsrooms. Just 6% of reporting journalists are Black. They also found that 4 in 10 Black Americans say it's extremely or very important that the news that they get about race and racial inequality comes from Black journalists. A much smaller share, around 14%, say it's highly important that the news that they get in general, regardless of topic, comes from Black reporters. Andrew Altenburn, the news director at KWWL, has provided us some insights on DEI practices in journalism.
We're only 4 years removed from the George Floyd incident in 2020. I still think it's a pretty sensitive topic, and I mean, it's one in a series of topics that, come down to diversity, equity, inclusion. And it's been something that's been a very common topic just within news coverage in general within the last few years. On the campaign trails with presidential candidates, you've got that. You've got it within other businesses. You've got it even within the entertainment industry and how Hollywood's conducting themselves. So it's very much in the forefront of everybody. And I think newsrooms think about it and discuss it just as much, or should be discussing it just as much as any other industry should.
Representation is the inclusion of societal norms and diverse individual identities, race, gender, ethnicity, and status, among others. People consume media through different mediums. In all forms, it is important to ensure diversification and avoid misrepresentation.
Someone could have a different perspective on something that I don't have, my assistant news director doesn't have, one of the producers doesn't have. I think it's critical that every voice should have the opportunity to bring something to the table and say something. Again, I think it's critical to have those diverse voices too, that can share something that, again, many of us, while we may have, some differences, maybe we have a lot of similarities too that might put us into a groupthink mode. I think another important thing too is challenging our reporters that when they go out onto an assignment and say, hey, try and talk to somebody that doesn't look like you. Get a perspective that, may not be predictable, and what you might think is predictable or what you expect. Go look for somebody that is not somebody that we've typically heard from, or go into a neighborhood that maybe we don't typically go to for a perspective on something. I think those are critical ways to look at and critical conversations that should be had in newsrooms, not just here, but really anywhere in America.
Welcome back to Media for Change. We will now be interviewing a Cedar Falls High School student who is involved with Saga, an LGBTQ+ student group. But first, this message.
Even though we didn't grow up together, he's my favorite brother.
Hey, sis.
I'm the baby of the family, and he's the gentle giant.
What you know about Port Georgia?
Man, please, that's a classic.
You know when they say people are a rare breed? Yeah, he's that.
I'm sorry, I'll be back in a few hours.
Don't worry, Shug, you know I'm for you.
I know.
Go get the football.
That was my favorite memory. He was always for ya. This is a true story of me, Bridget Floyd, and this guy, George Perry Floyd Jr., my big brother.
Hello, welcome back to Media for Change. I'm Vex Sanderson.
And I'm Peyton Thamke.
And today we're with Elliot Martin, a member of the student group called Saga, located in Cedar Falls High School. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit more about Saga. What does it stand for and what are the goals of the group?
So Saga stands for Sexuality and Gender Acceptance. It's our GSA at the Cedar Falls High School. And the main goal of our group was to just kind of create a safe and brave space for both LGBTQ+ students and students not in the LGBTQ+ community to kind of, hang out together, talk about issues that we may be facing, and overall just create a space that they feel comfortable in.
Could you talk about why the group was formed or why it was necessary to organize?
So the group was actually formed before I came to the high school. It's been going for a few years now, but I think that it was just formed to, give students a space to be comfortable in. And recently we've been using Saga as a way to advocate for LGBTQ+ rights within the community and even the state.
Could you share some specific initiatives or events that the group has organized to provide support for people within the community?
So we haven't created many events or initiatives ourselves, but we attend a lot of already pre-existing events. One thing we do every year is at Cedar Valley Pride, we always have a booth there. We have a few of our members, especially members on leadership, come in, set up the booth, and are just kind of there as a presence to, you know, not only spread our message, but also show that we're out there.
And at these events, are you, like, what are some of your favorite parts of these events that you attend?
Some of my favorite parts, a lot of the time I speak at the events, and I think it's really cool that I get to do that. It's awesome to share Saga's message, but also to share, you know, my story with the community and share my experiences being a trans person within the Cedar Falls community.
For sure. And what impact have these initiatives had on you and the others in your school and your community?
I think it's had a really positive impact. It kind of shows people a perspective that sometimes they may not think about, and just gives them a lot to think about. Shows them the issues, shows them the good part, and it kind of, like, I guess, calls for a change within the community.
Well, that sounds great. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after this message.
Whether it's our stories, the warmth of our laugh, or our family's secret sauce, we all bring something different to the table. So make some space. The power of connection is waiting right outside your comfort zone. Learn how you can help strengthen your community at belongingbeginswithus.org/teamup.
Welcome back to Media Change. We're with Elliot Martin, a member of the student group called Saga, located in Cedar Falls High School. So how does Saga collaborate with other community organizations to help, or resources to help further its mission to support the community?
So we've actually attended a lot of different outreach events. We've done outreach with one of our middle schools, Pete. We came into their GSA meeting, and we explained to them what we do, what membership looks like, what our group meetings look like. But we also do a lot of community outreach. I spoke at the HRC event on behalf of our group. We've talked to the Junior League, talked at the Iowa School Counselor Association conference last year. We do a lot of stuff. We do as much as we can to kind of, get out there and be with the community.
And how do you bring up this conversation to students who are in middle school or possibly younger?
So when we went to the middle school with the Pete students, they already have a GSA, but we kind of explained to them how we expanded upon ours, because originally our GSA at the high school was really small, and we explained to them how we gained more leadership and then gained more membership, and then how we expanded doing stuff outside of the club, like outreach sort of stuff.
Nice. There have been recent laws that have been passed in Iowa that have impacted the LGBT community. How does Saga handle the potential pushback with administrators, parents, community members that are opposed to this mission?
Yeah, so luckily we haven't had much pushback at all from parents or other people in the community or the school. Of course, high school kids are always going to be saying rude stuff, but during our membership meetings, we always kind of talk through recent legislation, make sure everybody understands what is going on and the full extent of these laws, so that we don't have as many potential issues as there could be. And we give members a chance to just kind of talk about, anything that they have issues with.
Have there been any strategies overcoming any of them?
Yeah, so with one of the laws, trans people are not now able to use their preferred bathrooms. They have to use the bathroom based on their biological sex. And so we didn't have any gender neutral bathrooms specifically for students at the high school. There were staff bathrooms, but those were just supposed to be for staff. And so about 8 months ago, I had brought the idea of changing one of the staff bathrooms into a gender neutral bathroom for students to use to administration, and they thought it was a great idea. They were like, yeah, this is awesome. Now students and staff can both use the bathroom, and students don't have to walk 7 minutes to the nurse's office to use the bathroom, which really sucked. We did get some pushback from staff inside the school, one particular staff member, and we had a few meetings, emails were exchanged, and 6 months after I had proposed it, we finally were able to put the gender-neutral bathroom into the high school. And since then, I've had a few kids say, hey, this is really awesome. Like, I feel included now within the school, and they don't have to walk, all the way to the nurse's office.
Yeah, are you super proud of yourself for doing that? That's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome because it was very difficult to change some people's minds, but I feel like in the end it really worked out for the better, and it kind of opened the door to a lot more possibilities for the new high school as well.
And what kind of future steps are you planning on taking for these, like the bathroom thing, which I think is really impressive? What kind of future steps are you thinking of taking along those lines?
So at the new high school, Saga actually helped with the process. Well, we didn't help with the building process, but we gave ideas and we suggested that there be gender-neutral bathrooms put into the new high school instead of having to convert pre-existing bathrooms, and they were like, I never even thought of that. That's a really good idea. So now at the new high school, there will be gender-neutral bathrooms for students to use, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah. And how does Saga take any active action when it comes to recent legislation in Iowa?
So recently, Saga and then also the GSAs from the middle schools went to a conference with the Iowa School Counselor Association. They have like a Visit the Hill kind of day where we hear from speakers, but then we can also go and talk to lobbyists and legislators. And I kind of, brought up some of the issues that have been going on with the school because of the bills and laws that were passed. And I think that's just one of the ways that we're able to kind of get our voices heard, is going directly to the Capitol.
Mm-hmm. And then how do you do this within Cedar Falls and our community as well? Like, how are you engaging legally?
So I think doing the outreach events, just being a public presence, talking with community members. The HRC event was a huge thing. It was recognizing Pride Month, and they invited a few speakers to come share their story being in the LGBTQ plus community within Cedar Falls, and they shared good things, bad things, and what we can do to continue to make it good for everybody.
And how do you include others who may not be specifically in the community and want to be a supporter?
So at our school, we make sure that we use inclusive language and we invite everybody. We don't ever say, hey, LGBTQ plus students come to the GSA. We say everybody's invited to come to the GSA. I know in the past we've had students on leadership who are not LGBTQ plus members, but they are allies, and it's been really great to hear what they have to say about issues as well.
And what are some of the things that they have said?
A lot of them have also noticed that there is a large amount of harassment towards LGBTQ plus students, and I think it's important that it is also coming from outside of the circle. I feel like sometimes when minority groups bring up an issue, sometimes it's overlooked because they are in the minority group. But when other students outside of the group also, bring up that there is an issue, I feel like sometimes people who weren't willing to really listen do start to listen more than they had before.
And what kind of stories do you have that have advanced relationships you have been able to create within this club?
I know I've created connections with a few lobbyists and legislators, not too deep, but I feel like connecting with them has really improved my communication skills, and also connecting with the middle schools makes all of the schools a lot more connected. I feel like before we had started reaching out to the middle schools, it was just all separate GSAs, but now they kind of feel like they're intertwined, and kids are excited to come into the high school and join the GSA now because of that.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. You're very passionate about this, and I really appreciate you coming to speak about your organization.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. I hope it can help inspire others and join creating awareness and diversity of communities. We will be right back after this.
Anti-Semitism, a trail of hatred going back thousands of years. It lives in the shadows. It's not always swastikas and synagogue shootings. It shows up on social media and flyers on front lawns. Whatever its shape, the message is hate. And the shadow of anti-Semitism is growing. It starts with hating Jews, but it never ends there. If it stays hidden, it continues to spread. Help shine a light on anti-Semitism. Visit shinealighton.com, and together, let's drive out the darkness.
Attacks against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are on the rise.
My simple solution to the problem was remove people from the scene and help them feel safer. In terms of the hate crimes, I think there is so much more work to be done. We really need to come together and tackle this issue as a community.
Welcome back to Media for Change. Recent legislation from the state of Iowa has affected curricula in Iowa public schools. The 1619 Freedom School in Waterloo, Iowa connects African American students to literature that will help advance their futures.
Liberation Through Literacy curriculum at the 1619 Freedom School is custom designed to deliver literacy instruction that is also affirming for the students that we teach. So it focuses on Black history, Black culture, and reflects the community that our students grow up in.
A regular classroom teacher, and we were talking about comparing what we were doing here in Iowa with what they were doing in New York. And I was like, my biggest thing is like the kids aren't logging on, and reading on the computer is just really not authentic reading. And we know in Waterloo there was a huge achievement gap between Black kids and other kids. So I was like, the main thing is they need to read.
Liberation through literacy, that's our motto. And so we know from history that African Americans were all about education from before emancipation. And they recognized the importance of literacy, of reading, and how it was the foundation for all other academic and socioeconomic endeavors. So our curriculum doesn't shy away from the facts of history, of American history. We talk about sensitive topics like slavery. We talk about sensitive topics like segregation. And we don't shy away from that, even though our students are 4th and 5th graders.
Well, we focus on literacy because literacy is the linchpin of all academic success. So if you can't read, you can't succeed in any of your academic subjects. You can't do math because math requires reading. You can't do science. You can't do social studies. And so when our students are behind in reading, then it's understandable why they don't have academic success. And oftentimes, in schools, you don't get literacy instruction after the 3rd grade. That's why our program starts at the 4th grade, because our students still need literacy instruction.
We just got some information from the district. The kids have gone up 30%, and overall through the district, there's been a 5 to 7% increase in all 4th and 5th grade test scores since we started the center.
The 1619 Freedom School has a wonderful relationship with the Waterloo Community School District. The school district supports our school through transportation and joint programming, including summer school programs. And we work with the local Boys and Girls Club to provide summer programming for our students as well. And we've been supported by local philanthropic organizations as well. It's been amazing what the community has brought together to make this possible.
You need to come over and see our Liberation Library that we opened on Juneteenth of this year. So we actually have a library that's open 2 Saturdays out of the month, and people can come in to those libraries and they can actually sit and read, check out books, and of course those books are going to be like those African American books that you don't find everywhere. The old ones, we got some throwbacks, we got some autobiography of Malcolm X, we got some Toni Morrison. We love the band books. And so when you come in, it's almost like coming to read at home on the weekends.
What a great way to hear from some students. I mean, it's great, it's awesome to hear from students who are taking up the activism. They're involved in their communities, their schools, organizations. I think it's certainly great.
Yeah, I was really impressed that the 1619 school, their results, they went up 30% just from students participating in their program. So that was really cool, and it just provides accurate evidence that it's working, and it's why we need things like the 1619 project.
Absolutely. I mean, anything DEI is extremely important. It needs to be explored. It needs to be talked about. And so just kind of tackling those issues and getting involved in any way that you can, I think is really important.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining us today as we explored the issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion in our state. These issues impact all of us and need our careful attention.
It's our hope that constructive conversations, despite our differences, will help us build a just and equitable society for all.
This has been Media for Change. See you next time.